Okay guys, so we're going to continue on with the stat stuff. So today I'm going to show you how to do some stuff in the calculator to find the mean, the median, the lower quartile, upper quartile, all of that stuff. So there's a lot of notes on here. So again, I really suggest that you, if you can, that you print this out or you write directly on it, but just make sure that you have all of this somewhere that you can refer back to it. If you're going to write it in your notes, then please write down like all these key things here that I have on the left. Make sure that you write them down, okay? So let's just do some definitions. I know you guys know the definition of the mean, hopefully, but I'm just going to make sure that we're good. So mean is the average of the data. Average of the data. So for this, you would add up all the numbers. So if there's, add up all the numbers and then divide by however many there are. So for example, if you want the average of your test grades and I gave 5 tests, you would add up all 5 test grades and then divide that number by 5. The median, that is the middle number of the data. So that's the middle number of data. Okay. So that splits it in half, right? That represents 50%. That number represents the middle, so that's 50%. The bottom half of that, right? There's a lower quartile. So the lower quartile is the middle number, or the median, if you will, is the median of the lower half. Of the data. So that is your 25%. The upper quartile, as you can imagine, the upper quartile is the median of the upper half of the data. And you guessed it, that would be 75%. So before we move on, just really quickly, the median, the lower quartile, and the upper quartile. The lower quartile is also known as Q1. The upper quartile is also known as Q3. And then the median is the halfway point. So typically you're going to see it referred to as the median, but just know that this is your Q2. So really quick example, let's say I give you, I'll give you 7 numbers. Let's say we have 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So as you're going through, and it's important to note too that these 3, the median, the lower quartile, and the upper quartile, the numbers have to be put in order if you're doing it by hand. So if you look at the numbers that I just listed out, there are in numerical order, right? So to find the median, you would go through. So this gets checked off, and then 15, 3, 12, 5, 9. So this is your median right here. Okay, so then to find the lower quartile, I look at the lower half right here, and I would cross off 2 and then 5. So this is Q1. And then over here, right, 9, 12, and 15, Q3 would be the 12. That's all. The interquartile range, that is the difference between the quartiles. Between quartiles. Okay, so you actually don't have to find any of this stuff by hand. I'm going to show you how to do it in the calculator. But before we do that, you have to make sure that there's a setting that's turned on in your calculator. So if you have to go get it, then pause the video, go get your calculator. You're going to press mode, and then you're going to scroll down, keep scrolling until you see stat diagnostics. Highlight the on button and press enter. You have to turn the diagnostics on before you do any of what we're going to be doing today. Okay, and then you could press second quit. So this is how you're going to input data into the calculator. Stat edit, you put everything into list 1, and then to figure out like all of the information that's given to you, you press stat, calc, 1var stats, and calculate. You do not have to put anything in order. The calculator will do that for you. Now, when you press calculate, you're going to see a whole bunch of stuff pop up on your screen, and that's all these key things to know. So we're going to go through like one thing at a time as the week goes on, but it's pretty straightforward aside from the standard deviation thing. X bar is the mean, the SX is the sample standard deviation, the sigma X is the population standard deviation, N is the number of data points, so how many things you entered into the calculator, and then the rest is what we've talked about already. Min X is the smallest number, Q1 is the lower quartile, the MED is the median, Q3 is the upper quartile, and then max X is the maximum number that was inputted. So it gives you all of this stuff. The two things that you have to know how to do on your own, very straightforward, is the range and the interquartile range. So the difference between those two things is that the range is just the overall difference between the max and the min. So to figure out the range, you would do max minus min. That's it. So the highest number minus the smallest number. And then the interquartile range is the difference between the upper and lower quartile, right? That's the definition that I gave you before, the difference between the quartiles. So to figure that out, you would take your upper quartile and subtract your lower quartile. That's it. So those are the only two things that really you have to be able to do on your own. You just have to know what buttons to press in the calculator. And then also, this is going to look familiar. All of this should so far sound kind of familiar. A box and whisker plot. A box and whisker plot is when you put everything on a number line. We can just kind of sketch these. It doesn't have to be the full number line. If your numbers are too far spread apart, it's really not a crazy big deal, but you should know what this is. The whiskers go to the lowest value and the highest value, so that's right here and right here. These are your whiskers, and then the box is obviously in the middle. This first one is Q1. The one in the middle is the median, or Q2. And then the highest one is Q3. And then it all just gets connected. And the reason why we do this is to show the spread of the data, where everything is on the box and whisker plot, on the number line, essentially. The width of the box shows the interquartile range, and the width of the entire thing, like from whisker to whisker, is just the range. So the box is for the interquartile range, and the whiskers are for the overall range. Okay, so this one example below, this is what you're going to do. You do not have to put these numbers in order. You can type them directly into the calculator. The way that you're going to do that, you're going to press stat, edit, so stat, enter. If you have anything in your list right now, you're just going to go up to the top. So I'm going to highlight L1, press clear, and then down arrow key to clear it out. Okay, so if it is already clear, then you're already ahead of me. So once I'm in L1, I'm going to press 21, enter. So that inputs 21 in. Then I'm going to input 14, enter, 16, enter, 25, enter, 10, 12, 26, 17, and 13. Again, there's no reason to put it in order. You should end up with the 11th one because there's nothing to put in, so you're done. Now you're going to press second mode to clear it out and quit. Now, this is the part that you're not going to like. Your work for this type of question is going to be, if you're going to do it in the calculator, your work is going to be everything that you see on your calculator screen once it all appears up, okay? So for you to actually pull that data up, you are going to press stat, calc, 1var stats, and then make sure that the list is what you just inputted it into. So if you, for some reason, input it into L2, your thing should say L2, which it should do automatically with L1, pretty much. And then you go down to calculate, press enter. And then all of that information, it looks exactly like this. All of that information pops up. Okay? It's a little different than what it is. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to write everything down that I have on my calculator screen. You write it down on your worksheet or in your notes, and then we'll answer the questions after. I'll show you what everything means too. Okay, so you have all this information written down on your paper. Again, that's really like the most tedious part of this whole thing, is that you have to actually write everything down. So again, this is your work. That's why you're doing it. Otherwise, it says find the mean. You would just write mean equals 15.4, and we don't have anything to back that up. So the only struggling part is that you have to know what everything on here means. So X bar is the mean, so the X with a little bar on the top of it. The next thing underneath, that weird E thing, that's actually a sigma. It's a Greek letter. That means summation. So the sum of the numbers is 154. Underneath that, the sum of the numbers squared is 2656. Underneath that, that's up here, the sample standard deviation. Underneath that, the population standard deviation. And then N is the number of data points. So you put 10 high schoolers. So N is 10. The min is 6. The lower quartile is 12. The median is 15. The upper quartile is 20. And the max is 25. So when it asks you for all these other things, you should not have a problem knowing what everything is. So this is what you're going to write. The mean equals 15.4. The median is MED. The median equals, what was that number? 15. Next. The lower quartile, you're going to write everything that it wants from you. You're not going to write it using the symbols. The lower quartile is 12. The upper quartile, that's also given to you in this. The upper quartile is 20. And then lastly, the interquartile range. So that is not given to you. You have to do some work for that. The interquartile range is the difference between the upper and the lower. So you would do 20 minus 12. So your interquartile range is 8. That's all. Okay? And then lastly, it wants the box and whisker plot. So really you don't have to go any... Oh, that just moved. You don't have to go crazy with it, but you should still know how to do it. So if this is my number line, right, that's my number line. My whiskers are from 6 until 25. The whiskers are the min to the max. So 6 to 25. And then, again, this is just a sketch, so don't worry about being exact or anything like that. The median is 15, and 15 is a little bit closer to the 6 than it is the 25, so I'm just going to put that here. That's your median is 15. And then the lower quartile is 12, so 6 away from 6 and 3 away from 15. So I'm going to put that right about here, about 2/3 of the way. And then the upper quartile is right smack in the middle of these two, right, 20. So this is your box. And these are your whiskers. And that's it, okay? So be on the lookout for your homework worksheet that's due. Make sure however you took your notes, that you uploaded into Google Classroom. If you have any questions, please let me know. Have a good day, guys.